sometimes it's difficult to know where to put your money. There are so many ways to save. Joining me now is William Birdthisle. He is author of the book, Empire of the Fund. Good to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
So the main thesis of your book is that there are way too many ETFs out there. What do you think about that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there's a lot of different investment options. I mean, currently now, we're all basically the CFOs of our own investment portfolio. That's a big change over the last 30 years, and it's turned out to be quite a challenge for most Americans. Most Americans don't have the training, they have busy day jobs, and they're not doing a great job at saving it. So yes, ETFs are a problem. Many of the options are a problem, and unfortunately, like a lot of diet advice, the best financial advice is often sort of boring and ones that most people don't want to hear.
That is true.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about some of the crazier, and I use that word lightly, ETFs that are out there. For instance, you could put your money into an ETF that deals with cybersecurity. The ticker symbol is HACK. Maybe it's great, I don't know, but it's an interesting ETF. But I think that sometimes the biggest issue for people who are putting their money away is you end up spending so much on the management of these ETFs. So can you talk about that a bit and how to avoid it?
Yeah, no question. I mean, ETFs are particularly dangerous for the average ordinary investor for a lot of reasons. Not just for the crazy indexes that you've mentioned, but also because they can have leverage and be 2 or 3 times what their purported portfolio does. They can be inverse. They can do the opposite of what the underlying index does. And you can also short them, buy them on margin. There's a lot of things about them that make them very dangerous. They're like sharp knives in the kitchen. They're great in professional hands, but they can really slice you up if you don't know what you're doing. Fees are obviously the biggest component of any investment. And that's one of the reasons why if you can just get yourself into a steady, low-key, something like a target date fund with very low fees, you know, that's generally the best advice.
Should people stay away from a fund if it says actively managed?
Yeah, I mean, actively managed anything is a real danger sign. Active management requires humans. Humans are going to charge a lot. Indexes are often run by computer algorithms and are very, very cheap. And they kind of do exactly what you know they're going to do. There's a new movement afoot to make actively managed ETFs, and that's a particularly dangerous combination because they're very opaque and they're very expensive. So yes, active management is something that can be avoided, really should be avoided in the best portfolios.
Sometimes I see these fees though, and it says a fee of an actively managed ETF is just 0.7, and you think, that's not much.
Yeah, well, the greatest trick a manager's ever pulled is to quote fees in terms of percentage points, because they're not even percentage points, they're percentages of percentage points, so basis points. I think to most ordinary investors, those look like nothing. And it takes a great deal of quantification to figure out how much that can actually accrue to over years and years, decades of retirement. It would be a lot more interesting if they quoted them in terms of dollars instead of basis points.
They should have to do that. Are there any rules on the books?
Yeah, and there are some prospectus requirements with respect to most mutual funds that you have to say what the general fees would be, but they don't actually tell you what you're paying. And I think if individual investors knew what they paid every year, they'd be a lot more salient.
It's almost impossible to get away from this fee game that's going on, though. I mean, if you put your money anywhere, and I'm not picking on them, but just about everybody, Fidelity, most places have some sort of fee attached to it. So how do you avoid those fees?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, I think some people, and one of the things I suggest in my book is that if we open the thrift savings plan to everybody, the fees that you pay in the thrift savings plan for federal employees is just 2.7 basis points, which is rock bottom. But you're absolutely right. You can't get away with fees, and you know that's not a surprise, right? The people who offer these services have to make a living as well. Generally speaking, you know, outfits like Vanguard and Fidelity really do offer some low ones.
They do.
And if you can get into something steady, something prudent, and something with a low fee, then you really shouldn't mess with it very much, and that could be good for decades to come.
So just ask a lot of questions then if you're putting your money into some sort of investment vehicle.
Yeah, no question. And the ultimate question is the one that you just mentioned. I mean, it all boils down to the fee. Now, some people think that that's an easy question to answer because if you open a prospectus, it'll say an expense ratio. But if you take a good look at a prospectus, you'll find lots of confusing fees in there. There'll be administration charges, 12B1 fees. So you really have to look at the very bottom line. The only thing you should be comparing is the bottom line expense ratio, the final fee at the end of the day.
Thank you, and best wishes to you and your book.
Thank you very much.